All right, we're live. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome from Nashville, everybody. Ellis, Diversity Chair for the Nashville Public Relations Society of America chapter. We're very excited to deliver a second installment or a second episode, if you will, of our Diversity Chat series. Our diversity chat is an online discussion about corporate brands communicating diversity and inclusion through issues and audiences. Our last chat was in April. We featured Michelle Smith, who is communications director for diversity at AT&T at their headquarters in Dallas, Texas. And we're very excited to welcome our second guest presenter, Mr. Matias Cavallin. Matias is the Vice President of Multicultural Engagement at Zeno Group. Here he leads the complete multicultural practice for this firm. He's got over 7 years of experience in public relations, specifically focusing on a heavy emphasis related to the Hispanic and the African American communities and the initiatives that drive those communities for different brands related to community relations, crisis communication, developing corporate and branding strategies that target these multicultural audiences in both the online and the traditional space. So we're very excited to welcome him today. He is fluent in Spanish and has created a variety of different types of Spanish language materials for his clients. Particularly, he's going to talk to us today about the engagement that is focused in the Hispanic community and the different layers that come with that communication. And he's going to give us some specific case studies from Kia Motors, which is one of his largest clients, as well as some experience that he's had as serving University of Phoenix as a client as well. Before joining Zeno, Matias actually founded his own Hispanic-focused communication and social media agency and worked with a variety of different large brands there. And Matias, welcome. Welcome from Los Angeles.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really happy to chat about this. This is something that, a lot of people talk about having kind of a personal passion for their job. For me, I live it. Because, as you can obviously see from my skin color and the fact that I speak Spanish is, I grew up with the Latino culture. I'm from Argentina originally, and for me, being able to be here today is a great pleasure.
Thank you so much. So tell us, what led you to public relations and what's a day like for you at Zeno Group?
Yeah, so originally my degree is in journalism. So, obviously a lot of the skills that you have in journalism transfer over to PR. And I remember one time I received a pitch when I was the managing editor of my university newspaper from a PR individual, and I never had any idea what it was. I inquired into it. It seemed really, really interesting. And I obviously made the jump over to public relations, and now here I am at Zeno Group. And I think with many PR practitioners, I think one of the great things about kind of what is a day in the life of Zeno is it's so hard to answer because you never quite know when you wake up in the morning what's expecting from you. You might have a crisis to deal with. You might have, suddenly a huge media relations opportunity or even a new business opportunity. For me, that's kind of the thrill of working at Zeno. And I would say one of the biggest things for me in terms of kind of the culture here and what we really kind of strive to do is this fearless spirit. I think if you ever kind of go on our website, if you think about Zeno, or if you hear from our CEO, Barbie Siegel, at all, she always talks about the spirit of being fearless in the sense of not being afraid to kind of try new things, of new endeavors, whether it's in the media relations aspect or just working on a day-to-day perspective. And I can attest to that because when I started here, there wasn't media relations, multicultural practice at Zeno Group. In fact, when I came, one of the beauties of it is this culture, the fearless culture, helped me cultivate developing my own multicultural division and growing from there. And I would say that's very unique to a lot of agencies and a lot of companies because many agencies don't have the patience for it. But here they helped me grow, cultivate, and here I am.
That's awesome. So give us some feedback on how you've seen, particularly how you've seen that culture change as it relates to how we approach the Hispanic audience. Go into a little bit detail about those culture shifts And what are some of those lifestyle demographics and stats that really stand out for the Hispanic audience?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people have probably seen statistics such as, well, Hispanics have a 1.2 trillion buying power now. In 2015, they're the fastest growing minority. What people might not know is states such as California, Texas, Florida, even Georgia are shifting. In California, for example, has already become a minority majority state, meaning there are more minorities in that state than any other ethnicity, specifically Caucasian. And in fact, this year alone, this 2014-2015 school year kind of marked a milestone for, I think, this country. In fact, the reason why I say that is there are more kindergartners now of color, primarily Hispanic, that have entered the school system than any other time before, and are actually a majority. So that means anyone beyond kindergarten now will be pretty much a minority majority population. And to that point, one thing is, since I know that we're talking to a big group here in Nashville and hopefully a larger portion of Tennessee, I was doing some research last night, and with a few Hispanic studies had found that the average age of a Caucasian in Nashville and in Tennessee is about 40 years old. African American is 31. And with native-born Hispanics, here's the striking stat: it's 12 years old.
Wow.
And it shows you the vast difference, and really kind of the shift of, in less than a decade, this is going to be a huge population. And while in Tennessee it's only 5% right now, that's going to more than triple in the next 10 years. So it really kind of shows you the prowess of the importance of actually keeping a track of this ethnicity, having it in your plans, and knowing, as we all know, that you need to have a long-term investment with the population to be really successful. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's an amazing stat. And it's a great stat to bring to our local audience, and even to our audience, because I'm sure we've got people watching who do not live in Tennessee. But that's an amazing stat. I was actually looking up some similar stats as well this morning, and saw that the full shift isn't really scheduled to take place until maybe 2044 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But to have the discussion now is very important, because one of the significant things that you just said was that the average age of the majority of the Hispanic population right now is 12 years old. That means by 2044, they're going to be well into their 30s and 40s,
Yeah. And one of the things that really is especially true with Hispanics, and the importance in kind of talking about why, and I hate to use the old tobacco adage, but get them while they're young. But one of the things that is so important with this population especially is they're incredibly loyal to brands. So when you're working with this brand, with these ethnicities and with Hispanic population specifically, you obviously want to know that they are a brand that when their dad uses a brand, they're much more likelier to actually be adopting that brand as their own home, as something that they want to purchase. So whether it's a car vehicle, whether it's detergent, something like that, there's still that kind of nostalgia factor that plays into it. And for me, one of the biggest things to note is it kind of hits on what is the passion points for Hispanics as a whole. One thing that I always like to talk about is Hispanics are so diverse. They obviously are a wide gamut of different people. Colombians, for example, are much more likely to have a college degree, while El Salvadorians are less likely. Cubans are much more likely to be Republican, while Mexicans are more likely to be liberal. All of these vast differences exist with different nationalities. You can't really just speak to them in one way, but what I will say, kind of going back to my original point, is these passion points. When you're communicating with this audience, it's so important to know that there's four main passion points with Hispanic audiences. That's family, that's music, that's sports, and that's food. And it's universal across the nationalities, whether you're Argentine or whether you're Colombian. These hit home for you. So when I'm consulting with brands, when I'm getting them to understand something, I always try to make sure that we kind of live in the four quadrants of anything that we do with our campaigns. Because again, if you're really going to tailor a campaign to Hispanic audience, it's so tough to just nail it down to one nationality. One thing that I will say is with this growing population, that's something that even as they assimilate into this country and they become more Americanized, if you will, they ultimately will hold on to those four passion points.
Awesome. Tell us about the experience that you've had specifically with Kia. Tell us how the evolution of their multicultural division or the work that they've been doing in Hispanic engagement came about, and how that was essentially inspired and ignited by your work with Zeno Group.
Yeah, so, similar to Zeno, that helped me kind of allowed myself, I should say, to kind of start my own division here and grow. I would say one of the biggest things with Kia was Kia really didn't have, at the time when I came in, a multicultural communications department. It really was non-existent. They obviously did stuff, but it wasn't, kind of a dedicated individual doing these things, communicating to them on a regular basis. And Kia was very, very gracious in the fact that they allowed me to kind of really help them cultivate a program. Help them grow a program where we not only targeted Hispanics, but we also targeted other diverse groups such as African Americans. Of course, with any brand, and probably a lot of our audience today, if you're an executive, you probably don't live, the lifestyle of a Hispanic or an African American. In many ways, you might be an older Caucasian gentleman, and really your life experiences don't fall into that aspect. So you might question, well, why do I really need to do this? Or, what do I really see the intrinsic value to doing something like this? So a lot of it for me also was education, being able to actually educate individuals within the company, executives, my clients, things like that, to where they began to understand what it is in terms of the importance of Hispanics, why they need to speak to them. So it wasn't just me doing kind of a PR job of speaking to media and telling them, well, here's the importance of communicating with Kia from a Hispanic standpoint, but more so the other way around, of being able to engage our executives, being able to engage our larger company and be able to say, well, here is an audience that we really need to dedicate ourselves to. And one of the best ways that I was able to actually show that is to showcase other ways that brands were doing this, really kind of light that fire underneath them, really, of showcasing ways that Ford, Toyota, Honda, things like that, where their competitors were doing things. Because I think a lot of times with executives, they really need to know that, oh, you know what, if my consumer or if my competitor is doing this, this is probably something I should be doing as well.
Talk to us a little bit about some of the campaigns that you did. I know that you've worked very extensively with some successful campaigns with Kia, specifically the World Cup and FIFA.
Yeah, so Kia is an official global sponsor and partner of FIFA, all the way up to 2024. And the reason, and a big reason, is obviously its global appeal. But within here in the United States, obviously soccer, and we talked about, again, the four passion points, one of them being sports. Soccer is a huge passion point for Hispanics. So when Kia looked into this, it was something that we had to really amplify here in the United States, because it's a great opportunity. Of course, the World Cup was in Brazil, but you know what? We were really doing a lot of things, such as teaming up with Adriana Lima, and showcasing the ads, the marketing opportunities that we had here. So what we did actually was we organized a campaign to really showcase the way that Kia was speaking to Hispanics and kind of that bicultural audience, by not only getting them in marketing trade outlets, things like that, but then giving them that avenue to speak to, familiar faces that, like, such as Adriana Lima, who acted like our spokesperson for the World Cup, to be able to speak to them about the passion that Hispanics have for the game, the passion that they have for the World Cup, which naturally translated into, you know, Adriana and our spokespeople being able to talk about, you know, Kia products, being able to integrate that into messaging. So it opened the door for us to be able to be in outlets where they typically would never cover a car. So, for example, Sports Illustrated, or so, you know, an outlet like that, never in a million years would they necessarily do a feature on a vehicle. But by us teaming up with a sports initiative such as the World Cup and being able to have a brand ambassador like that, we're actually able to go out and get Kia into publications where never again might they be interested. But again, we continue to gravitate to a new audience in that method.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, and it ties right into those passion points that you said are embodied in the Hispanic community. Speak to another campaign that you shared with me that you're working on that's targeting African American women, actually.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the things, you know, I talked a little bit about educating our executives. You know, one of the things that I really kind of stress to everybody that I work with, not just them, is the fact of knowing that, well, you know, African Americans and both Hispanics are actually very, very much growing in terms of their purchasing power, the amount of money that they make on a yearly basis. And for me, you know, I didn't want to really kind of showcase African Americans in the light of the sense of what people might have considered 20, 30 years ago of, oh, well, they can only purchase value brand cars. That's not the case at all. In fact, African Americans, you know, are heavy inclined towards purchasing luxury vehicles, things like that. So what we have done here and what we're going to ramp up with the campaign is we've actually teamed up with a group of 5 moms that will be showcasing videos where the moms themselves, they're mothers, but at the same time, they're entrepreneurs. They're heavy hitters in their industry. They kind of balance a life of kind of these two different worlds. So what we did is we're actually filming a series that will be featured in Uptown Magazine in the next few months, where they will be talking about their lives, how they balance and juggle kind of this high-powered career, but at the same time live this life of being a great mom, all within Kia vehicles. Talking about the way that certain vehicles kind of play into their favor in terms of their lifestyle. So some moms might have a couple of kids, might be preferred to drive the Kia Sorento. Other ones might be preferred to drive the Kia 900 because they have older children and they kind of live a certain lifestyle. Really, again, what we're looking to hit on are certain passion points, and for African Americans, family is also a passion point. So that's kind of the way that we're looking to hit this, is again, not necessarily pushing a product down somebody's throat, but more so talking about something where somebody, when they listen to it, they say, oh yeah, that's like me. Or yeah, I can identify with that individual that's speaking in that video because I live a similar lifestyle. So we're really excited about the partnership that we have here. You know, and the video should be coming out this summer. So, and, you know, I would definitely say for people to keep a lookout for that.
That's awesome. And you had some other big things that you were working on with Kia as well. So you gave us a great campaign that you did that was focused on the Hispanic community and the one of the passion points being sports, and then also one specifically tailored to the African American community. Give us another example. I think you said that there was one focused on Kia's. It was a new campaign, I think, a separate campaign, and then also Kia being Car of the Year, perhaps?
Yeah, so, you know, Kia was recently awarded in February for their efforts of pushing the Kia Sedona to the Hispanic community. Obviously, family, again, is a very, very big, you know, passion point for Kia. So we actually were awarded by the Hispanic Motor Press Guild the Car of the Year, and it was for our Hispanic marketing efforts, for our communication efforts. So we're really proud about that. And this was an award that was actually given to us by a group of journalists who kind of really make up kind of the juror pool, if you will. You know, and to kind of talk about the new campaign that we recently worked on, Kia, you know, and one of the things that I should note is Hispanics primarily over-index in digital communications and actually being on social media and sharing things like that. So Kia has actually made a shift in the recent months, being more towards a digitally oriented platform. So what we did recently is we teamed up with Telemundo, which everybody knows is a competitor to Univision, to create a series called El Maestro. Basically what it is it's almost like The Voice. These are digital web series that you can view on Telemundo. Individuals there are driving in Kias. Again, there's very heavy integrated product placement, but most importantly, these are people that are inspiring musicians. They are actually being mentored by Luis Enrique, who is a famous singer from El Salvador. And he really kind of takes them to different locations using Kia vehicles to go out and talk about, music, to talk about their growth of their career, to really train them to become musicians. And it all kind of, culminates with them doing performances. The reason why we're so happy about this campaign, again, it hits on that passion point, the other one being music, because, it's something to where when people listen to this, again, that nostalgia factor plays into it, to where you might remember a song that they might be performing as part of their performance, that your mom may have grown up with, or that you may have listened to as a child. Luis Enrique kind of resonates across both generations, because your parents might know him, and of course he continues to perform, so you know him, and that plays into that family aspect. So again, a lot of what we're doing with this campaign is a lot more subtle, in the sense of, while it is, a show or an online reality show, it really has a lot of those key passion points to where a Hispanic audience might resonate with it and connect with it a lot more.
That's awesome. And I think that the way, again, that you mentioned the connection, it creates an opportunity for the legacy that you mentioned earlier, for, as you said, when older generations will remember certain things, the younger generations will pick that up as they're older and as they get to a point where they can make their own purchasing decisions. And so it just creates that legacy. Speak to us a little bit about how we'll flip and go into another mini case study, if you will, a little bit more detail about maybe another client that you work with in a similar capacity, but flipping the industry and talking about your University of Phoenix experience.
Yeah, so University of Phoenix, I think most people would look at it and say, well, that's not necessarily a university that I would consider, but actually a lot of people go to University of Phoenix not straight out of high school, but these are people that I would say are kind of maybe on that second career path in life, or in a position in life where maybe they have a couple of kids and they're reconsidering where they want to go, and say, hey, I never got my degree, and I, going back to a college like UCLA and being in classes with 18-year-olds, that's not for me. So University of Phoenix kind of offers that opportunity for them to be able to be in another area to where they can say to themselves, hey, this, I feel a little more comfortable here. I can take online classes, such and such. One of the challenges, though, with University of Phoenix is people thought to themselves, well, how do we really kind of, get ourselves connected with an audience? Because a lot of the people that are looking to get into the kind of this education tend to be Hispanic. They're people that may have immigrated to this country to where they're not quite sure on how to get into education. And, University of Phoenix itself was challenged with really communicating with this audience. They would share the great, opportunities that they had of flexible classrooms, the online setting that didn't really resonate with individuals because it was so kind of, I'd say, focused on, what they offer, but really the question that we found from a lot of the audience was they were saying, well, I'm not sure if I can do it. So when we actually activated with this campaign, what we did is we went out and did very, very deep research on finding individuals, Hispanic individuals primarily, that had accomplished something as a result of graduating from University. So we actually pulled away from having executives speaking. We pulled away from having general spokespeople in suits. We pulled away from kind of off talking about kind of what the classroom setting is, and rather we talked about, Juanito from San Diego, who graduated and now runs his own business, but as a result of it was able to accomplish that by going back to college. Because I think one of the key things that we found, and what really resonated with media and with consumers, was being able to have an individual that looked like them, that spoke like them, and had the similar life experiences to be able to come out and say, yeah, San Diego Union Tribune or San Diego Red or San Diego Latino, these are different newspapers in San Diego. I had kind of a tough time, but I overcame it. And here's how I did. And here's how the university helped me. Here's how they walked me along this way. Because the way that the media took it and the way that consumers took it, and why it works so well with a lot of media across the country, was we were able to do regionalized targeted pitching, that they would say, here's a case study of an American success story. And I think for all of us, we always want to see people succeed, especially in newspapers and outlets like that. They want to see people succeed, so they're more willing to write about it. They're more willing to cover something like that. So I would encourage, when people are doing case studies, or when people are doing campaigns, that they really try to look beyond who they have as a corporate suit within their company, and maybe more so look at who they have as a consumer. Because they may be surprised a lot of times that their consumer base is a lot more diverse than they expect. And that individual, a lot of times, depending on who they are, may be a better spokesperson for the brand when it comes to speaking to a primary audience, such as African Americans or Hispanics or LGBT, than that individual that's sitting up in the C-suite.
That's a great point that actually you just mentioned. That'll lead me into my next question. Talk about some of the mistakes in Hispanic or even outreach. Often, and being in the same business, we'll experience a client who realizes that there's a need to penetrate a specific community, so that they can touch that community in a specific way, but they aren't quite sure how, because there are so many layers to who we are as African Americans or who we are as Hispanics. So speak to some of those mistakes that you've seen in client outreach.
Yeah, so there are a lot of mistakes that people make. I always like to say mistakes are part of growing, but one of the things that I think are first and foremost is understanding the nuances of an audience, of understanding how they live and what their culture is all about. I think really before you kind of go out and decide to launch a campaign, I think it's necessary for brands to kind of really look not only externally but also internally and ask themselves, how much do we really know about this community? How much do we reflect this community in terms of our own employees, in terms of what we do, as well as what are we doing within those communities to really kind of speak to them. It's very different from general market, to where you can kind of go to Wall Street Journal and New York Times and just pitch something, and they may or may not write about it. But with, I would say African Americans, and even more so with Hispanic communities, they really want to know that you're fully invested in what they're doing. I think there's a big reason for that. Is a lot of ethnic communities have been burned in the past by brands, in the sense of they just feel like they're being sold something rather than being kind of invested. So one of the mistakes that I think is really not kind of understanding who you are in terms of where your current relationship is with that community. And then kind of shifting over to more kind of the Hispanic stuff. One of the things that I always say is, if you don't have somebody that kind of speaks the language or understands the culture, you find somebody. And that's kind of why I talked about, finding someone, whether they're a consumer, whether they're a third-party advocate. You don't want to make that mistake of having somebody that doesn't look like your audience, or doesn't speak the language, to come out and pitch media, or to be at a press event. Because again, people are going to look at it and say, well, they want to sell me a product, but the best that they could do was to find a Caucasian gentleman with broken Spanish to tell me about a particular story. One of the things also that I think is so important in the Hispanic community, and I kind of hit on it earlier, is understanding that first, Hispanics are not all unacculturated. We're not all Sofia Vergara with very, very thick accents. At least I hope, but I don't have an accent. The other thing I would say is, we're very different. I kind of pointed out again some cultural differences between nationalities, and I think it's so important to know when you're speaking to an audience that the communication that you have should be regionalized. So, if you decide to go and have a celebrity spokesperson, as your role, as your kind of spokesperson role, you want to ensure that this is a person that is going to have mass appeal and not just speak to, a certain, nationality. An example that I've had in the past is I had a client a few years back to where he went and signed up a famous mariachi band. And mariachi, for everyone's education, is a certain type of music based in northern Mexico. Being able to say, well, yeah, we have a spokesperson is great, but then when you go to areas like the East Coast, where Dominicans, they listen to bachata, and the Cubans, they don't even listen to mariachi. So you have this guy that you paid $500,000 to, and really is falling flat with his audience because, again, he doesn't kind of understand the culture that he's speaking to. So I would say one key thing is to always kind of understand where you are, and especially if you're doing targeted regional outreach, to understand what type of Hispanic is in that area. Are they more assimilated? Are they less assimilated? And I think one of the mistakes that I would say all brands are doing right now is really kind of not jumping on the bandwagon of understanding the assimilation that is taking place of Hispanics. Of an understanding, kind of how I pointed out within Tennessee, that the average age of a Hispanic is 12 years old. These are all kids that were born there. They're probably speaking more English than they are Spanish. They're listening to more English language media, but again, they still are holding on to those 4 passion points. So I would say it's not necessary every single time now to only kind of say, well, we're only going to speak Spanish to this audience and that's it. You have to grow with the audience and understand where they are right now for you to be successful, while still understanding that those key passion points of sports, music, food, and then family are always going to be paramount. And that is your kind of key structure of being able to communicate to this audience.
One of the main words that I hear, or I keep kind of going back to in my brain when I hear you speak specifically about those passion points and how the engagement really gets the best of itself, is authenticity. Mm-hmm. And especially when it comes time to do either some on-site activation for events, just things of that nature, the authenticity is very, very important. And you also mentioned that in reference to the African-American community as well, in relation to being able to not be sold or not be, misled in any way. You want to feel connected to that audience. And with the mention of those mistakes, have you ever had any experience with a campaign that didn't go as well as you thought it should have gone?
Yeah, I'm not going to name the client, but one of the things that we found is kind of a big mistake that we'd gone for was utilizing spokespeople that really just didn't resonate with the audience. That really kind of just didn't have an authentic feel to them. We had actually gone out. The mariachi one is one example, but where we felt like, well, we had teamed up with a kind of a large mainstream celebrity, and we assumed, well, this individual can come out and do this. And for me, I would say the mistake was myself, and I would say this is for PR practitioners as a whole, is not really kind of speaking up and being that kind of consultant voice that you need to be. It's not just being a yes man to where where your client decides that this celebrity or this spokesperson is going to be ideal because everyone listens to them, and you kind of saying, well, I'll make it work because they're the client. I would say for me more so is you know, and especially if you're coming from an area where you obviously have a certain life experience, so whether you're LGBT or African American or Hispanic, you have that life experience that that individual, that client may not have. So being able to kind of come out and say, well, actually, you know what, you may have spent, you know, this amount of money on this individual. I need to tell you as your advisor that this is not going to work. Unfortunately, in that campaign, you know, I was still young. You know, I kind of let I would say the client agency relationship get the better of me, and ended up using a spokesperson that really, again, was just not authentic, you know. And I think you hit on kind of that key term, you know, and that's something that I think taught me a lesson as well, is understanding, well, you know, the more of a consultant role that I can play, in terms of advising this individual in a correct format, the better off they will be, and the less mistakes we'll make as a campaign down the road.
That's a great point. And I think we've all had those campaigns where we would hoped it would have gone better than it did, or, you know, thought we had all of our ducks in a row, and then ultimately needed to go back and tweak and have some lessons learned and evaluate for the next go round.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to us about, I wanted to let everyone know, tweet us, send us your questions and comments. If you have a specific question for Matias, feel free to use the hashtag PR Diversity. We've got a couple of people giving you some tweetables, Matias, so we're excited about that. But if you have a specific comment or question for him and something that you'd like for him to address, please use the hashtag PR Diversity. Also, you can include your question in the window if you're watching from YouTube, or if you're watching from Google Hangout. There is a Q&A window on the Google Hangout page or on the event page for the Hangout. So feel free to type in any questions or comments that you have. I think we could find them easily, though, a little easier in the hashtag, if everyone uses the hashtag PR Diversity via Twitter, and we'll be checking those periodically through our chat. Because we have just a couple more minutes left anyway, so feel free to get those in as quickly as possible. You spoke earlier, Matias, about the impact of the minority-majority population shift. What do you think that's going to do for PR practitioners in general as it relates to being able to make the case for diversity? Do you think we'll still have to consistently make the case for diversity and multicultural engagement, or is it going to be more in your face?
Well, I think it's already in your face. You know, I think one of the things that as PR practitioners is very important for us to do is to understand a lot of times that our CEOs, our COOs, our CCOs, they're not quite there yet. It's similar to, I would relate it to how social media is you kind of have to bring them and show them that this is in everybody else's face but your own, because you have to remember that a person that is a very, very top executive, you know, unless they're very, very savvy, which a lot of them are, they're living in kind of, I would say, an insulated lifestyle, to where, you know, they go to work, they may not see people that look like, I'd say different faces, or they come home and they spend in their family and friends, they look like them. However, I would say everybody else is kind of it's kind of, I would say, in that more kind of normal lifestyle, kind of sees it on a day-to-day perspective. So I would say, as a PR practitioner, it is of the utmost importance to be able to actually bring them things and show them the diversity that is changing. So an example that I've brought to people, and I've showed them, even though, for example, I don't have any entertainment clients at the moment, one of the things that I did show them over the last summer was the impact, and I showed them an article from Variety of the impact that Hispanics have had on the movie industry, and showcasing that Hispanic mothers specifically actually went out and saved the movie industry for the summer by really kind of purchasing almost a third of the tickets. When you're able to show them things like that, that kind of in-your-face type thing, they become more educated about it. And I would say it behooves you to understand that and to be able to bring it to your clients every single time, even if it's just the most minutia of details. you want to be able to showcase that to them, because then they begin to educate themselves. And then that's when your budget doesn't get cut. That's when your budget becomes integrated, because the goal, I think, and what I do believe will happen in the future is multicultural, whether it's with Hispanics or with African Americans, isn't going to now just be kind of a standalone to where the general market folks decide on an idea and then come to the African American team or the Hispanic team and say, okay, here's our strategy. Now you come up with something that will resonate with this audience. Rather, what we will see as a result of, I think, PR practitioners educating their clients or educating executives is this will be a fully integrated program to where, that general market spokesperson you might use might end up being Beyonce, it might end up being Shakira, it might end up being somebody that is of color, but again is utilized for your general market, because then I would say you'll see that the executives will understand, okay, this is something that is in my face now. It's changing, and you know what? For me, I'm seeing better results for doing a more integrated approach.
Awesome. We have a question that just came in. Let me see. This is from Twitter. We've got this is from Story Hungry from Twitter. The question is, as an aspiring journalist, or you were an aspiring journalist, why did you disregard journalists and go to PR? What made you make the switch from journalism to PR?
Yeah, so for me, I love journalism. I wrote all my life, and it was something that I had a passion for. I think the reason why I made that switch is I wanted kind of that aspect of creativity that allows itself with public relations. I would say that there's nothing wrong with staying a journalist. Many of my friends are journalists, but for me, I think I really wanted to be able to develop bigger campaigns, be able to develop things to where I was able to take many of the intangibles that I learned as a journalist and apply it towards developing a campaign. And one of the things, for example, why I'm able to do that, why I get so excited about it, is because I'm able to communicate something to my community. I'm able to tell them a story that's very similar to how a journalist tells it. So for me, there were a lot of kind of similarities between the two, and I think that's why I chose to kind of make that jump into public relations.
Great. I'm going to check to see if we have any other questions. At the moment, I don't think we have any coming in, but I'll remind everyone who's watching. We got a good number of viewers, so I'll remind everyone who's watching to use the hashtag via Twitter, PR Diversity. And if you're watching through YouTube or through the Google Hangout, feel free to type any questions on that page if it'll allow you. But I am periodically checking the PR Diversity hashtag via Twitter. Matias, talk to us a little bit about what you think companies need to do, specifically PR firms, marketing agencies, etc., companies that have huge communication departments. Speak to what they need to do in order to recruit, mentor, and maintain more minorities being employed within their organizations.
Yeah, so one of the things that I would say first off the bat is to really kind of look beyond who their kind of circle of friends are, and who kind of, I would say, to step out of their comfort zone. One of the stories that I always like to tell is when I took my first job in public relations. It was a fellowship. I was still in college. I would go and work in. It was a very, very large brand. There was, I think, 8 of us that were chosen, and I walked in and there were all these executives and nobody looked like me. Everybody was white. Everyone, obviously was, from here, and, there wasn't kind of anyone for me to relate to. And, I think if I was kind of, not as strong-willed as I was, I may have thought, well, this isn't for me because I don't see anybody like me. And I would say that's for many career paths is I think, brands and agencies and people that they obviously want to recruit need to be able to kind of go into new places, and not just go into necessarily, universities that they went to or clubs that they went to, but being able to step out of their comfort zone and find areas, whether it's, Black student associations or Hispanic student associations, and offer to have somebody there, to come and speak to them about public relations, to get to know them. Because I think, one of the big reasons why I think there's not a lot of us, people, at least people of color within public relations right now, or at least reflecting kind of the population trend, is because it's not, I would say, a industry that really kind of makes a big fuss about advertising themselves to, people of color. So, we don't necessarily see it. And then if we do see it, we don't necessarily see people that look like us. So I would say that's the biggest key, so, whether it's teaming up with, the Hispanic Public Relations Society or something like that, to where you're, again, able to penetrate areas to where you don't necessarily feel comfortable in, but that the audience will be reflective. And it's so important, I would say, because, so many times I've seen when I'm working with my colleagues who aren't necessarily kind of fit that multicultural realm, is they do campaigns, they do things that kind of fall flat because they don't really understand the culture. And it's so important, I would say, at an agency and at a brand, to have individuals that reflect your consumers, because that's the way that you're going to survive. That's the way that you're going to succeed in business, is being able to understand, what your audience is going through, because focus groups can only tell you so much, and be able to have somebody there at the table that's able to tell you strategy is going to make you succeed a lot more than not having an individual there.
That's great advice. Another piece of advice I asked you to give is, how do you recommend practitioners who are of a certain ethnic descent to avoid being pigeonholed within their organization? Not only just working on Hispanic accounts or projects if I'm a Hispanic, or the African American projects if I'm African American, or even the women, the woman focused account because I'm a woman, or LGBT, whatever. How would you recommend that those practitioners make sure that they create value beyond the group that they identify with?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is, obviously, you bring some, you don't forget that you do have a value being a woman, or being an African American, or being a Hispanic. That's something that I always like to say, it's good job security, because there's not a lot of us, and you bring kind of a certain level of insight that somebody else doesn't have. One thing that I will say, though, is, it's important to be able to kind of speak to your team, speak to your bosses, speak to people like that, and educate them in understanding that really you are part of the mainstream, that your insights actually reflect what kind of that general consumer standpoint can be, and that you really are just the same as a white American male. In many ways, and in fact probably are more reflective of the current community aspects that do. And one thing that I arm myself with statistics, because I know that a lot of times people are so analytical, where I came in and I really made a case for myself of being able to say, well, here's kind of how our population's looking. And by not having me as part of kind of that general team, you're really missing out on what that general consumer is. And I think people really kind of take that to heart once you're able to kind of make a case for it and show that you are a little bit more beyond just, a specialty person of just doing one thing or another.
Thank you for sharing that. We have a question in from actually Dr. Natalie Tyndall, who's a part of, in Georgia, who's a part of our national PRSA Inclusion Committee. Her question is, what are the top qualities and competencies that multicultural communicators need? Very great question.
Oh man, that's a great one. Well, I would say the first thing is in terms of understanding and being able to know how business works, and being able how to communicate, I would say in a very clear manner. I'd say one of the things that it took me a long time to understand is really kind of how I would say the general business setting works in this country. Again, I come from a Latino culture, and we're I would say a lot more laid back with things. We speak in a different manner, and I would say it took me kind of a while to really kind of adjust myself to understand. Okay, I need to act a certain way in a business setting, and I need to kind of be this way, and adopting many cultural practices that I didn't have. And really kind of assimilating myself into kind of the general business setting. I would say a thing that is very, very important, especially, and this is it's so true, I cannot stress this enough, for a person of color, is confidence. Again, you are more likely than not, even today, when you step in a boardroom, you're going to be the only person of color. And as much as I hate to say this, is a lot of times it kind of, for a second you look at it and you say to yourself, man, where are my people, or where are people that look like me? And it kind of throws you for a loop at times. But you really have to get beyond that and feel confident that there's a reason why I'm here. There's a reason why I was chosen for this role, and they feel that I'm competent to do this. So confidence is something that I would say is so key, because a lot of times, as I talked about education, a lot of times you're going to run into practitioners, you're going to run into other individuals that may not be as educated around what you do around your ethnicity, or around the importance of this, and may ask questions, and may do things that you might think, well, that's not necessarily probably the best, most PC way of saying something, but having that confidence to educate somebody, and that obviously leads into patience. When I obviously worked with my clients, a lot of times they didn't really kind of understand things, and it took a little hand holding. To where I would say, well, Hispanics aren't just all working in the fields, and we're not just all, having 8 kids, and, and African Americans aren't only just living in these areas. We're all, they're all over, and they're purchasing this. If you don't have that level of patience, you're not going to survive in this industry, and you're not going to be able to convince your clients to want to do something. So I'd say kind of those are the main keys, I'd say, with any practitioner that kind of comes into this industry, is being willing to kind of do that. And I know that it's tough, in the sense of like, you feel like a lot of times like, well, why do I have to be kind of that person with that job that I feel burdened in terms of, or that responsibility of having to speak on behalf of all ethnicities in this world? But, you're actually being, in many ways, a pioneer, and somebody that is opening the door for a lot of other individuals that are going to come behind you, no matter what their ethnicity, or what their sexual orientation, or what their heritage might be, to where you can actually say, yeah, you know what, I've opened these doors for you so that you can actually, succeed and have this stuff, make it a lot easier for your life.
Yeah. Thank you. Wow, that was a great question. I really appreciate that. We've got another question. Thank you, Dr. Natalie Tyndall from Georgia, for asking that question. Very, very good one. We've got another question that was just sent to us through the Google Hangout Q&A chat box. And let's see, that one is from, let's see, Janice. Hey, Janice McCord here in Nashville. Janice is a member of our Nashville Women of Color and Communications organization, which I'm one of the fearless leaders of. So we're very excited that these ladies have a space in the conversation today. Janice says, her question to you, Matias, is minorities will account for the majority of Americans by 2045. We said that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How can we educate or approach our clients to take a 360 approach to target them instead of being behind the ball when it pertains to purchasing power? And you mentioned this a little bit, but are there some things that you could do to go a little bit more in depth, Matias?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the first thing is arming yourself with statistics, arming yourself with kind of showcasing. I think most people know that. The other thing that I would say when you're working with a client and trying to get them to kind of understand, well, why should I do this, or why should I, obviously, talk to this ethnicity, is showcasing what your competitors are doing. One thing that I always like to say, and I've used this many, many times again, is the conversation that we're not having, that we're going to have tomorrow, is a conversation that your competitor is having today. So with Kia, I can give you a great example. And I kind of hit on it before, is it's using a little scare tactics, but you show them the success that their competitor is having right now. You show them the way that somebody else is making money on something that they're not making money on. And I think that kind of key translates into any ethnicity, any kind of show, any kind of individual that you're speaking with, is really they're missing out on business. And when you're able to kind of translate that into dollars and cents, and show them kind of what their lack of ROI is as a result, they tend to be a lot more receptive towards what you're doing, and where you're doing it. And I would say the key thing again is being able to be a person that is confident and not really going to be silenced. Because I will tell you, and this happens to me even till today, is people say, well, we'll wait until tomorrow, we'll wait until the next day. And as annoying as I probably sound to my clients, I always bring it up. I bring it up on calls. I show them articles from competitors. I'm always making sure that while I'm doing my job for them, I'm also kind of pinging them in their ear every single time. Hey, you're missing the boat. Here's what your competitor did yesterday. Here's what Coke did the other day, even though they're not in your industry. Here's what, and I guess, here's fresh off the boat on ABC. It just launched. It's the first Asian American, program. I keep showing them how on a day-to-day basis, their consumer, their kind of, their industry is changing. And, a lot of people, I haven't gotten anyone so far to tell me to shut up. I'm sure they want me to say it, but that's the way that I do, is I'm kind of an annoying gnat in their ear, and eventually they come around and they become educated. And I think once they begin to see the ROI on that standpoint, then you're obviously able to kind of change that stance that they have.
Thank you, Matias. That's very critical, because as you said, hopefully you're not, working their nerves in any way, because ultimately, if you don't, then they do miss out. Your clients do miss out. And I also appreciate what you said. The question prior to is that many times we have to be pioneers within our organizations, not only to set a tone within the organization, but to provide a face for the younger generations of PR practitioners who are looking to even consider PR as a profession. They don't know to think about our profession because they don't see enough people who look like them or come from where they come from. And so that's often an issue for us in even the growth and the diversity of the industry. Do you have, I don't know that we have any more questions. We've essentially run out of time at this point, and I think we've had an hour well spent. Is there anything you want to leave with?
Yeah.
You want to leave with the audience?
I do. So, I think one of the things that I would say is, I hope people get a takeaway is, multicultural PR is the future. It's the mainstream. We can no longer look at it as just being an aside. Really at the end of the day, the people that you're seeing on the screen in many ways are reflective of what the general consumer is today. And every single time that you step into a boardroom, that you step into a meeting, I think you really need to take that to heart. And, we're going to obviously still encounter hurdles of people wanting to kind of go down a more, general market route, i.e. white. But you always have to be that lone dissenting voice, even if you're the only one that is still speaking up, because when it does come around and when your client is finally educated on it, even if it might be 5-10 years down the road, they're going to look at you and say, wow, they knew what they were talking about. Maybe I should probably look at my Rolodex and give them a call again.
Awesome. I do have one question that just came in through the Google chat, and we'll wrap up if you don't mind taking this one last question. This is from Ashley Lawal. Ashley says, and Ashley's here in Nashville. Hey, Ashley. Ashley says, would you say the same communication tactics you mentioned from a corporate perspective could also translate over to startups and small businesses looking to tap into specific demographic markets?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Is I think for startups and for smaller brands, they're obviously looking to kind of gain a foothold in their industry and looking to gain a foothold with their competitors. One of the things that I think obviously you can look at is, whether you're, a financial transaction app, or whether you're, obviously a language app, or whatever it is, there's certain cultural nuances that might play in your favor. I think it's important for these guys, when you're developing your communication tactics, to look at, research, to look at really who it is that is interested in doing this. I've had a lot of startups that I've worked with in the past that have actually taken off as a result of being able to target a multicultural audience. An example that I always like to use is, I used to work with, an app that was similar to kind of the predecessor of Skype, and they used it for a lot of business settings and things like that. What they found out was that they actually worked really well because with the Hispanic audience, because a lot of us have family all over the world. And it actually resonated really well. So you're actually able to take communications, tactics that you're doing, and make it resonate with other audiences, because there's uses for these things that you might not necessarily, your client might not necessarily know about, but that you're able to identify for them.
Thank you for the question, Ashley, and thank you for that answer, Matias. I think we'll wrap up. I don't see any other questions at the moment. Let's see. I know that you just kind of gave us your last words before that last question came in, but is there anything else you want to share with us before we head out?
No, as I said before, I would say, when you step out of this Google chat, I hope people kind of leave with a sense of energy and urgency of wanting to really kind of be that voice in their office, to be that voice in their company, and really kind of be, I would say, the brand ambassador for what they want to do and what their ethnicity, that they have, because, you might not be identified right now in the sense of your brand or your boss thinking that what you're bringing is of necessarily the most importance value, but they will see it. And the more you continue doing this, I guarantee you, success will come both professionally and personally as a result.
Thank you, Matias. We'll wrap up, and thank you so much. Really appreciate you for joining us today for our second diversity chat for PRSA Nashville. We are very excited to continue this series. Our next chat will be in August, which is National Diversity Month for PRSA organization-wide. So all chapters, the entire organization is going to be celebrating Diversity Month in August, and so we're very excited about that. And our Nashville chapter has some great things planned. We will do another chat in August in observation of Diversity Month organization-wide, and then we'll also have some other things that we'll probably plan to do via social media to observe the diversity not only in our communities, but mainly the diversity and the need for more diversity and inclusion conversations within our industry, since PRSA is the first and foremost organization for public relations practitioners. So we're very excited as we see our work grow in the public relations industry, as well as those of us who work in the industry advocating for diversity and inclusion. So Matias, thank you again. And it's good to see you again, and thank you for joining us. And you all can continue the conversation with the hashtag PR Diversity, and you can continue to share the link to our YouTube video, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.